Hey everybody, Melissa Sorrentino here. Want to talk to you a little bit about traction. Yes, traction. Catching traction, finding traction, applying traction, giving traction. Actually, not just seeking traction, but actually proactively adding traction. Okay, I'm fascinated by this whole Improv Sophisticate concept that I started a while back now, that just about every life lesson that I'm coming across in my world is something that actually applies to improv scenes. So, life reflecting art, art reflecting life. I just find it fascinating because there's literally not been one single life lesson that I didn't go, oh, and that's also what makes your scenes better. So, if you're on stage and working out your improv and just sort of deconstruct that back into your life, that's kick-ass. Huge difference is, though, life matters. It's less disposable. But improv scenes are more disposable. And that is actually a huge concept that I keep re-grasping continually, because I live my life very much more like an improv scene than a lot of people do. And if you look at my life and you like how it's turning out and you're like, hey, that speaks to me, then cool, then I'm an example of that. But if you look at my life and go, wow, she's divorced, she doesn't have any kids, she's moved around, she's barely in touch with her hometown anymore, because I move forward. I prefer not to live with my life in the rearview mirror. I'm usually looking out the windshield. I have to keep my eyes off the rear view because I'll go, fuck, I missed that opportunity, or I didn't do that. But I'm trying to just always continually stay too busy looking forward. So anyway, I think I'll start talking about this in the concept of the scene work, because it's just a little bit easier to grasp and get traction on. What? Traction. So you're in a scene and you have an idea. If you don't put the idea out, then the idea is not even out and you can't catch traction or do anything with it one way or the other. So clearly you got to put the idea out there, and it needs to be yes-anding what your partner's doing. You can't just show up with your own idea that's completely isolated from anything your partner's doing, or it's just two isolated people having an argument or not catching those gears that need to work together to create the scene. So starting with an idea. Let's say an idea comes out. And let's say your partner reflects and sort of patterns up on that idea. And then you pattern back. Now maybe you've had 3 instances where clearly you've created a pattern in a scene. Now, once you recognize that, and this takes a certain level of acuity. I think that's the word. I'll have to look it up later and see if I'm using it totally wrong. But you start to develop. Improv is so fascinating because the longer you do it, the more it develops. And that's why I highly encourage people my age to continue with improv, so we can build this art form. Because if we just leave it to the 20-somethings, they don't even have the life experience that we have to just keep texturizing our work and creating a higher fine art out of it. But anyway, that's a little aside. So you and your scene partner, whatever, the scene has sprouted something that's interesting. Maybe it's a game, maybe it's a character thing, maybe it's a location, whatever it is that's that's worth chewing on, digging into. Once the pattern is created, you need to evolve yourself as an improviser to have the acuity to recognize that, to feel it. I feel it here in my chest, but some people maybe brain it up. I'm not sure how other people's minds or bodies or artistry works. But for me, I get a sense, an acute little ooh. And once I get that little I don't have time to fuck around with whether or not I'm going to add traction. It's important to immediately begin to add traction, because if you miss it, you've missed that off ramp or on ramp, rather, whatever, however you look at it. You've already let the beat go by, and now the next beat is what's going to need to get traction. But the sooner you catch the patterns, catch the traction, the sooner you can start to kind of like, I'm going to call it dogpile, add the traction to get that generating moving forward. I think one of the instincts for especially earlier improvisers, that's what's happening when you feel that impulse to create conflict. Conflict is something that in our sort of like organic artsy minds kind of go, oh, this will be interesting. This will be something to chew on. So a lot of times people will throw conflict in the form of some sort of negation. Hey, you're a police officer. I'm not a police officer. I'm just posing as a police officer. Okay, well, now we've got a beat of a scene where we have to deal with that. So what's going to create a pattern? Well, maybe 2 seconds later, somebody's a doctor, but they're not really a doctor, and somebody else is a fire person, but they're not really a fire person. You know, just whatever that pattern starts to establish, that's going to become, you know, maybe a more meta scene, but that's what's going to happen if people are paying attention and throwing that, you throw the gravel on the tire that's spinning in the mud, because you don't want to keep spinning and staying in one place. Like, what is our scene doing? You want to grip and you want to get that traction and you want to move this scene forward. So I'm now going to apply this to life. In life, at least for me, when my life has gone well, when it's rocking out, it's when I'm adding traction. And friction does add traction. If you're letting life add friction to you, like you don't deal with your marriage until your spouse is cheating. Then there's some fucking friction, and those wheels are going to spin. They're going to catch that, and they're going to move in some direction, usually like divorce or splitting up or something like that. But if you have the acuity to see like, something's awry, and then you're trying to add traction, like let's work on this, let's dig into this. You know, that's probably not the best example in the world, but I was trying to choose something sort of like more universal that maybe people could relate to. But for me, it's ideas that I don't always throw enough traction onto, and then I let them just slip. It gets slippage, and then it doesn't go anywhere. So if I have an idea, like let's say, okay, I want to quit my job. If I add some Abraham Hicks in the New Age movements type stuff, she would call it momentum. So getting that momentum, you have that moment of acuity that says, here's an idea, here's a cool thing, here's something neat, here's something to chew on. And if we allow that to catch momentum in our lives, it actually creates actions and results, and then that just continues to generate like the scene of our life moving forward. But if we're just always having ideas, like I have an idea for a business, I have an idea that this person could be a great friend, but you don't invite them to lunch, or you don't set up that business plan, or you don't do whatever needs to be done to add the traction to get that grippage, to get some actual action moving forward. But when it comes to that initial idea part, it's words. Words will create that momentum that moves it forward or backwards or just drops it. So if you're like, oh, I have a great business idea, and then you allow yourself to have words inside of you, your inner dialogue that says, I have good ideas. My ideas usually tend to work. I think I'm going to move forward on this idea. What else is there that I could grab onto or enjoy about this idea, or just sort of steep in a positive direction of making it happen? Those are positive and proactive words, head words, momentum words that create positive movement forward. If we instead are always adding words like, that's a dumb idea, or my ideas never work, or I suck, or what was I thinking anyway, or, that's dumb, you immediately get slippage, and then that's not the one that catches momentum. Like when you're dating, you are going to add some traction to someone that you really feel you're attracted to. You're like, oh, this could go somewhere. Now it's time to implement date 2. It's time to add words like, maybe this person could be the one, or maybe this person and I could enjoy more time together, rather than like, that person probably doesn't like me, or I don't know, these things never work out. We squash things or we move them forward. And if you want to catch traction in your life, the slippage can happen at any point, and that momentum can get lost, and it can even start swinging the other way. This happens in scenes a lot. And it's not your partner's fault that they didn't have the acuity to pick up your pattern. It's always on you. It has to be. It just has to be, because you can't puppet anyone else into doing or saying something. So you can't blame this person, whether it's the person you're dating or the person, the business partner, the scene partner. You can't blame other people for you not proactively applying traction to that idea, or further traction to that action. You see where I'm going with this? Okay, I hope that made sense. It's kind of off the cuff, but I think it's definitely food for thought. Okay, so chew on that for a little while, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.